Line up, hit the troll in the face, see how loud he screams, most decibels wins a prize.
Oh, I've got this covered.
Really? You think so?
Do I get a say in this?
Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, we often like to dive very deep into the more complex side of things in the game, making entire builds, checking out unexplored concepts, and talking about weapons from a standpoint that includes a lot of variables, a lot of different reasons for claiming that one is better than another. But at the end of the day, sometimes what you want is a very simple answer. Which fully upgraded weapon does the highest damage with a single light attack swing for each attribute when at 80? No buffs, no spells, nor talismans or any sort of outward improvements at all, just the pure weapon damage on a light attack swing. With one really big stipulation being that to be considered, the weapon has to have the attribute as a base scaling, not only be gained through affinity. For an example of what I mean, the hammer that I've been using in this so far is on magic scaling, and this is actually a build with 80 intelligence. Why would I do that? Because I can. Is there a reason to? Not particularly, but I can. So avoiding silly things like that, as it is simply a massive strange secondary stat investment that you just won't stand to gain anything really from. What are the 5 highest damage weapons in Elden Ring? One for each attribute. First up, let's talk about strength, and all of you unga bungaloids out there probably already know what's up. For some of these, the math to add it up is a little bit harder, as certain weapons have better scaling than ones with a higher base AR, which tips the balance a bit. With strength, however, it is very straightforward, which makes sense because strength users would need that, wouldn't they? Because Giant-Crusher exists. It requires 60 strength to use. It goes to S strength scaling when set to heavy affinity at full upgrades, and it simply has the highest AR in the entire game at max level, and as a result of all this, it is clearly head and shoulders above the rest with the light attack swing, hitting for 790 damage on a light attack that doesn't have the unaware bonus. If you're wondering, this weapon gets the highest number of any of them on this list, meaning that strength does the highest number in a single attack. Surprising, right? If you want to get the Giant-Crusher for yourself, from the Outer Wall Phantom Tree site of Grace, head directly south to see a caravan inside of a barricade. Open the chest in the back of it to find this weapon. Secondly, let's move on to dexterity. The more swoosh swoosh and less bam bam of the melee focused stats. When it comes to this, the monarch above the rest is the Guardian Swordspear Halberd. This thing is meaty. It scales incredibly well with dexterity as well as having great base weapon damage at max level. And as a result, on the troll without unaware bonus, it reaches 705. It can even outdamage something like the Arumi, which while having S dex scaling at max level is a whip. And sorry, but whips just don't have the strongest attacks for pure raw damage in a single light attack. This is where the whole applying affinities to offstat weapons comes into play as well though, with a really perfect example of what I mean. If you want to be as technical as physically possible, the highest damage weapon with dex scaling when you are at 80 dexterity is the Giant-Crusher hammer again, but set to keen affinity. But this is really stupid. Why? Well, 2 main reasons. Firstly, you have to get to 60 strength to even wield the Giant-Crusher, so you would need to have 60 strength and 80 dexterity for this to even be a worthwhile conversation and comparison, at which point there are so many better things that you could do with your attribute points. That is a lot of levels, but also, and arguably even more importantly, it only does 782 damage when you do this anyways, which, if you're keeping track, is 8 less damage than the Giant-Crusher does on heavy scaling with nothing but 80 strength. It does less damage on keen scaling with 80 dex and 60 strength than it does on heavy scaling with 80 strength and no other offensive stats boosted. Yes, it is higher than the Swordspear in pure number, but why in the holy rings of Miquella would you do that rather than just being a strength build with it? See why we aren't doing that now? In any case, if you want the Guardian Swordspear, it drops from the Erdtree Guardian enemies that you can find around the map, with one of the easier piles to farm being outside the northern Erdtree in the Caelid region, just up and down the path leading to the tree. Third, then, we will skip right on by to Faith for a little chat about a higher power. The higher power in this case is Malakath's Black Blade, having a higher power than any other faith scaling weapon in the game when it comes to light attacks. The main thing that I tested this against was the Staff of the Avatar, which came pretty damn close. The main difference between these two is that the Maliketh sword has a bit more base damage, and the Erdtree staff has a bit better scaling. Both of them require 34 strength, so while I do have the strength to wield them, and they both scale with strength on top of their faith, the scaling stat there is equal when using both weapons, and so there is no contamination of the results towards the best faith weapon. Those results then have Malakath's Black Blade on top by quite a little bit, sitting up at 675 for a light attack without the unaware bonus. To get this weapon, bring the Remembrance to your finger reader in the round table hold. Fourth up today is the best intelligence weapon of them all when it comes to swinging that light attack, the one that you can somehow best use advanced calculus to work out the ideal velocity and angle of each swing to increase the damage of your hunk of metal, and for that, the ideal companion is, unsurprisingly, the Royal Greatsword. This thing is the quintessential intelligence melee weapon in Elden Ring. Maybe not quite as legendary as the Darkmoon Greatsword, but this one, as far as swinging the thing for the purposes of hitting rather than firing out projectiles, this is the int sword, and that matches statistically in practice too, as it hits for a solid 742 in with the light attack, not counting the unaware bonus, of course. This means that this sword hits harder than the best dex weapons. Well, at least in a single swing it does. The best dex weapon definitely has the advantage of speed as well as it is, well, the dexterity weapon. Actually, I probably tested more int weapons for this than any other, but in the end, the Royal Greatsword was so ridiculously ahead of the others it made me feel silly for even thinking it was possible to be a different one. To get this for yourself, you have to finish the Ranni quest line, which you can find a helpful link for down below for assistance, and then once you have done so, go back to Ranni's Rise in northwestern Liurnia, where you'll find a familiar face turned a bit hostile. Defeat them and they will drop this weapon for you. And then fifth and finally, we are diving deep into the forbidden knowledge of the darkness. We have the Arcane Weapons. Now there are a few that you might think would show up here, but I almost guarantee you no matter what your guess is, you probably got it wrong. Unless you happen to be someone with a ridiculously high luck rate, getting this rare drop chance weapon from the Albinaurics, the Ripple Crescent Halberd. The base attack damage on this thing is pretty decent, but nowhere close to amazing, but where it shines is the fact that it randomly comes with S arcane scaling on it. There are no colossal weapons with natural arcane scaling at all, and that makes this weapon the largest natural arcane weapon, with S scaling, with no other arcane weapon even coming close to this. The swing that this thing gets is sadly only 593, but hey, what can you do? You're comparing against the other weapons for your own attribute. The best is the best, even if the best is sort of not quite as good as the other attributes' best. For the most part, with arcane weapons, this is made up with statuses. They are usually just covered in statuses, but that doesn't mean that the light attack damage doesn't matter at all. Just for your personal interest, the main contender for this one was actually the Bloody Hellas Rapier, managing 585 against the knight enemies, as the troll itself has pierce resistance, but still a bit short of the Ripple Crescent Halberd, even with the testing against the knights. In an actual build, I'm probably more likely to recommend the Bloody Hellas for general use, but that isn't what today is about. This isn't the general use 5 best weapons. This isn't about weapons that are worth devoting yourself to. This is about weapons that you can devote to yourself. The absolute simplest ways to make your weapon work around the attributes that you want to have. And when it comes to swinging light attacks on an arcane weapon, that's the Ripple Crescent Halberd. I glossed over it earlier, but to get this one, you'll have to get as a drop from the Albinauric enemies who wield them, with a decent group of them spawning near the Academy Gate Town Site of Grace in Liurnia. And that just about covers it, everyone. The absolute highest damage weapon for each attribute in the game. No fluff, no buffs, no talismans, no external factors, not even a care or consideration for weapon skills, just very directly and simply, which weapon does the highest one-handed light attack damage when at 80 of your main attribute with the minimum requirements to wield it otherwise. I've been Cotton Dinosaur. I hope you've come away with this with knowledge that you want to put to use in game, or at least knowledge that you find interesting, if nothing else. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.